to Sia Nejad Sports. I am really excited today. We've had so many great guests, but this one really hits home for me. I think Kevin Pheley is the perfect guest for this show, frankly. Kevin, first, I just want to welcome you to the show. For those of you that don't know, you can follow Kevin Pheley on Instagram at Kevin Pheley. And you can listen to his podcast, host of the Thinking Bigger with Kevin Pheley podcast, which is a great and a very insightful, impactful podcast. I encourage everybody to go download it now. Kevin, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I'm so glad you and I both know people like David Meltzer, because we wouldn't be having this discussion if it wasn't for him. I was in Vegas last year and we tried to connect and it didn't work out, but we've kind of stayed in touch. I know David Meltzer is a mentor to you. I think he continues to be a mentor to you, but super thankful that I can have you on the show, because frankly, for those of you that aren't familiar with Sia Nejad Sports, and Kevin, I don't necessarily expect you to be super familiar with this brand, but it's really all about motivation, inspiring people to not only have goals, but tackle their goals to kind of, Kevin, get past step one, because I think that's where people fail. It's the idea phase. Everything's really exciting. They take maybe one step, and then it's step two and step three that all of a sudden become too strenuous. Excuses kind of fall in, and then they just kind of forget about it and they move on to the next thing. Your story is so great. It's just, I feel like you're the perfect guest. So I kind of want to level set right off the bat. Where are you now? Because I want to go to your history, because
Sure.
I think starting with where you are now is where I want to start.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess now I am going through a bit of a growth process where, so I spent the last couple of years building a company, a software and marketing company. And now I'm in kind of a weird phase where the business is growing itself. So I'm focusing on the podcast, but I'm also focusing on buying and investing in some businesses. We do a couple $1 million a year, and it's pretty much automated, which is really cool, because in the beginning, the business certainly wasn't, and it was kind of a nightmare to build and start. But doing pretty good. I run a podcast called Thinking Bigger with Kevin Pheley, where I try to interview positive professionals, people who can give insight into what people are missing, right? So when we all look back at our younger selves, there's things that we wish we could have told ourselves. And that's kind of what the podcast is around, just providing value to people that need it. But yeah, I run a couple different companies, and I'm kind of, I don't know what else to say.
Well, it sounds like a pretty good success story, but even more successful when you consider sort of where you came from. Now, before I get to your past, how old are you, Kevin?
I'm 30 now.
Okay. Pretty young to have a multi-million-dollar company, but let's apply some context to this. 6-7 years ago, did you ever picture that you would be in the position you are now?
Yeah, to a point. So I mean, before I got sober, I always knew, like it was like I knew that I was going to be successful, and I already was, hypothetically, in terms of money, successful even before I got sober. I had a job in kind of a corporate banking sort of job, and was making six figures, but was mentally and spiritually broke, but I always knew that financially I'd be successful. I don't think I believed that spiritually and I guess subconsciously, you could say, I was going to be successful.
So let's back up even more to, you mentioned sobriety, and I know you've been sober for 6 or 7 years. When you were in your sort of teenage years, you came across some just problematic situations with the law and with alcoholism and things of that nature. Can you just sort of set the table with where you were then?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was a lost kid. We had moved around a lot, so that, if you moved around a lot, maybe you're in a military family growing up, that you are forced to make friends really, really, really quickly. And so that's one thing I was always good at, moving from school to school. But the problem is, when you meet new people, they kind of get you into new things. So, I was hanging out with some friends after I had moved to Oregon, and went through a breakup with this girl and ended up, partying with all these guys. And before that, I hadn't really drank alcohol, didn't really care to. And I think that I was just in a phase of my life where I felt really lost, right? Grew up playing football, had some head injury issues, so couldn't continue to play football. I kind of thought that's where my life would go. And I think when you lose meaning, you start to kind of drift and you stop really caring. And I think that I just fell down a rabbit hole of just partying, and so, well, I'm not going to go play football. I'm not going to go play baseball. I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to party. So that was it. I think that's kind of what led me to drinking a lot.
I know you mentioned that, like, you broke up with your girlfriend, I did, like, your first, like, big time girlfriend, and that kind of led you sort of to that party mode. Was it something that simple and, quite frankly, impactful? Because I know when you're a younger guy, like, those things really kind of can impact you. Was
Yeah.
it that led you to, like, the alcohol and just being like the party guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of that and also the influence that Hollywood and just American culture has, right? Because the culture for a young man is to play sports, go to college, play sports in college, be part of a frat, be a cool dude, party hard, be like that party animal. Like you see in the movie Old School, or really any college movie. It's like, oh yeah, high school and college, you just got to drink your face off and be crazy. And like, I felt like I really had to live that life. And my older brother partied a lot when he was younger, and he's super successful now, and he's a teacher and has a great family. So I think I always thought that I had to do that. So when I break up with this girl and now I've got an open calendar, right? I've got nothing else to do. Well, I guess I'm going to party. I want to go meet new people. I want to feel comfortable in social environments. And yeah. So yeah, I think that was.
And by the way, we have Aaron Bailey watching. I can tell you, because he just tweeted at me a few minutes ago. He's been sober for 1,115 days. He tweeted
Yeah,
at me.
let's go.
So
Great
really
work.
cool. Aaron's got a family, and I'm sure they admire his courage and just sort of battling. Because I'm sure, Kevin, it's I don't think you speak for everybody on this, of course, but I'm sure it's a battle to just abandon that and kind of stay true to, like, the non-party mode. Are you still grappling with that in any way, or if you somehow sort of transcended it, you don't even think about it anymore?
Dude, the second that I decided to get sober, it was done, gone. I've never had anything like that happen before in my life, but I mean, when I got sober, I was, again, like, if you looked at me, you would think that I was a super successful, happy, great person. And people didn't know that I struggled with alcohol. I wasn't like your typical, I'm not showing up to work drunk. I'd never got a DUI. Like, it wasn't like that. I would drink and I couldn't stop, right? Once I started drinking, I wanted to keep going. I wanted to party. I didn't want that feeling to stop. So when I got the reason I got sober is I fought with a bunch of cops, woke up in jail in South Boston with zero recollection. Okay. And if you wake up in jail with no recollection and they're not telling you, like, the guards, when I'm like knocking on the window saying, hey, what am I here for? And they're not answering me and they're looking at me like, fuck you. I'm like, okay, did I kill somebody? Did I crash my car? What happened? So that's a scary thing. And not knowing, there was a good 30 to 60 minutes or so where I didn't know why I was in jail, and I had this time to think. And it's kind of like, man, I could be in here for life. I don't know what I'm here for. And I knew, before I knew what I was in trouble for, I knew that I was never going to drink again. I left, I posted on Facebook, I think it's time for me to stop drinking for good. And that was the last time I drank, July 11th, 2016. And it just went away. The feeling, the want, the desire to drink, gone. I don't know. Something subconsciously changed. And yeah, I'm sure if I started drinking again, I would want to continue. But yeah.
That's super interesting. By the way, Propstar's in the chat as well. He says, hi, Sia, great content and great guests. So Kevin, already receiving compliments. I want to take you back. You have a YouTube short that really sort of impacted me, and it goes on that sort of that drinking subject. from Michael Larson, that YouTube short, like it struck me. I literally, and I just posted it on Twitter, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I had to watch that or I wanted to watch it like 7 or 8 times. I wonder, like, I want you to explain like that YouTube short, because literally it kind of got me choked up. I assume that happened, what he said to you. I assume that happened before you were in that jail cell, but I got to think those happen at sometime within close proximity to each other.
Yeah. And man, thank you for bringing that up, because that, chokes me up. So that was my buddy, Michael Larson. So just to give you guys a little context on that, Michael Larson was one of my best friends growing up. He had cystic fibrosis, which attacks your lungs. You can't breathe. And he also had other health complications from it. So basically his body was like, he was going to die. It wasn't like if, it's like when, right?
Yeah.
He was going to die young, and we all knew that. So it's funny, because when somebody is that young, and you'll see this with kids with cystic fibrosis, they know how to live life, because from an early age, they know they're going to die young. Well, Michael always lived large, but he couldn't, because his body was shutting down. He couldn't party, couldn't drink, couldn't smoke, but he was always hanging with us. Like, he was just like everybody else. He just didn't party like that. And there was one day that I was smoking a joint. I had chewing tobacco in my lip, and I was drinking a beer. I'll never forget this. We were outside of this, like a gas station. We were like sitting with a bunch of dudes by our trucks and stuff, like just being like I said in the video, being a bunch of 19-year-old, idiots pretty much. And Michael, again, never judged us. Like he was always having fun, and I don't know, but this time he stared into my soul. Like, I remember looking at him like, what is your problem? Why are you staring at me like that? And he just said something that changed my life, which was, you have this perfect body. You have this body that it's free of ailment. You don't have disease. Even if you had a disease, your body could fix it. My body is shutting down. My body is going backwards every day. And he's like, and I sit here and I watch you destroy your body with alcohol and cigarettes and drugs and, the lifestyle you live. And that was the first time where I really stopped. And I mean, and he wasn't like a serious dude all the time. We were funny. He was a troll. Like he was so funny. So for him to be this dead serious caught me, and it hit me deep. And yeah, that video went viral on a couple different platforms. And I mean, I shot the video at his grave, because I go visit him every time I'm there. But yeah, man, that it really makes you think that how much do we take for granted? How much, not just with our physical health, but in our time with our family, and just the things that we have that we take for granted and think we have forever, but we don't. And it can be gone like that.
Let me ask you, because, David Meltzer's been on this show. He's been on Sia Nejad Sports, and as well as anyone, that one of the things he practices, for lack of a better way to say it, is gratitude. Is that something that you incorporate? There's a lot of things I want to talk about, including like taking inventory of your schedule, which I know is something that you truly preach. Of course, David preaches that as well. Do you practice gratitude in any way? Like, whether it's a gratitude journal, or you wake up and you or is that something that's you used to do and you're not necessarily doing anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I think gratitude is like a way of life, right? And that sounds kind of corny, but I think if you wake up and you journal gratitude, like whatever works for you, right? But for me, I think just literally building it to be a habit to, throughout your day, even in a negative situation, find gratitude, right? So like my dad and I got into an argument on the phone. Not a real argument, but it was just like a dumb, quick thing. It was over in a minute. And you can look at something like that as, man, my dad was being kind of a dick, right? Or you can look at that as, damn, I can talk to my dad. I can call my dad. I know I have tons of friends whose dads either weren't there when they were growing up, or their dads are now dead. Like, so little perspective changes throughout your day are like little adjustments, when you're flying a plane, right? It can send you in a whole different direction with a lot of little adjustments.
So the Thinking Bigger with Kevin Pheley podcast is interesting. I mean, I think one of the things I took from it is you're certainly like giving out advice in some perspective, but you're also just talking about people's journey and kind of pulling, well, what are the things that work for those people? And that's, I think, what your guests are kind of talking about. And we'll get to some of those like common themes. But before we get to some of the things that I think are really important in maybe achieving goals or creating really good habits, whether they be related to gratitude or more practical things, are there any common themes that you've noticed? And this is kind of a broad question, but common themes that you've noticed with all of the people that you've interviewed in terms of ways they've made themselves successful? And that might apply to your experience as well. But I'm just curious, are there one or two or three things, or am I limiting it too much with the question, that are just common themes, like these people did this and that's why they're where they're at?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that's so obvious is they started, right? So whether you're going to be financially successful or spiritually successful or successful with your family, whatever, right? If you're not where you want to be, you have to go somewhere else. So if you never start moving, if you never get on that train and try to go to that destination, you're never going to get there. I see so many people that are so comfortable being uncomfortable, and not in a good way. I mean, like, somebody has a bad relationship, a negative job, a terrible living situation, whatever, pick your poison, but they're miserable, but they at least know what they're going to get. So they don't take the risk to go do this thing that they want to do, right? They don't take the risk to go get that dream life. So everybody on my podcast, the number one theme is they've gotten started. They actually do things, and they're not perfect. Nobody is. That's a misconception, is people put on this perfect show, but people fail, right? Like, I slept in past my alarm today. I don't wake up at 5:50 every single morning, right? Like, today I slept in. I'm a human being. It happens, right? But if you're not consistently moving forward and trying to get at least 1% better every single day, then you're not going to move towards your goal. And two, they take risks. So that's kind of combined with the first part, but they do take risks. They get out there, they get out of their comfort zone, and they try new things. They actually move forward and they take risks. So if you're going to start a business or start a podcast, right? Most people, your competition that's starting along with you, if you just don't stop and you just keep going, you'll pass them. People just give up along the way. So if you can move towards a goal and not give up, you'll eventually hit it, or you'll be a lot closer than you were, you know?
I think you're right about like, one of the things I have kind of written down here is keep working, because you're right. Unfortunately, most of the world is sort of beset with that issue of not being able to push forward when they meet any sort of negativity whatsoever, or what they perceive as negativity, because sometimes the failure is just a part of the process in becoming successful. But they meet that failure and they just stop and they say, this is something you say a lot in your podcast, this isn't for me. And it's that lack of wisdom that actually gets them back into that uncomfortable life. And first of all, if you keep pushing forward and you keep doing the work, obviously you're doing something actively that's probably going to get noticed more so than if you're doing nothing at all, right, Kevin?
Right. Yeah, for sure. And in terms of podcasting or anything that you do, I think that there's the principle of 2 feet from gold, right? Like, you're a lot closer than you think you are when you're doing something. So for instance, we both put out a lot of content. We both have you have incredible content. It's really easy to not see the benefit that that's having, and David Meltzer, let's bring up David's principle of helping over 1 billion people. It sounds like a crazy goal, but if you go help one person, that person can now help 5 people who can help more, and that spread. So you do have a bigger impact than you think you do. And especially with starting a podcast or a business or something like that, there's a lot of things that haven't come to fruition that you can't see yet that are right around the corner. So just keep going,
That's another thing, not to bring up David too much, but I was at a conference with him 2 Sundays ago in Miami. I met up with him and Jake. And, one thing that he said, and I think others said at this conference, is you have to understand that not everything is quantifiable. And therefore, your progress, that the work you're putting in, especially on the front end, you're not going to be able to quantify it. You're not going to be able to hit certain benchmarks in a week or a month or 2 months. All the while, you're kind of cultivating whatever it is that you're doing. But if you're looking to quantify everything in weeks or months, it's not all quantifiable. You kind of have to trust. I mean, this is something that David says, kind of trust the process and just have faith in the fact that you are making progress, even though you can't actually see it right away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's with anything, right? You plant a new tree. It's a seed when you start. You have to water it and you don't see change for a long time. You go to the gym, you start eating healthier. Day one, you're not going to feel or see anything different, not considerably. But if you fast forward a year of doing the same things, and you look at the before and after, it's going to look like two different people. So I think what a lot of people make a mistake with, and I've made this mistake in the past, is not seeing results fast enough and giving up. If you decide to do something, whether it's getting sober, starting a business, starting a podcast, whatever, if you decide to do something, you need to have the end goal in mind and you need to commit, and you need to just not stop until you get there. And if you can't commit like that, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
If you can't commit to that, if you can't commit to committing, then you're just not that serious about what you're doing and you might as well not start in the first place.
So doesn't that come back to another thing you like to talk about, is just being honest with yourself? You gotta have that conversation with yourself about, like, am I truly passionate about this? Do I truly want this? And if so, you're just going to keep marching forward.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to like what you're doing, but anything you do consistently is going to get old after a while. So pick something that you like, pick something that you love, and go forward with it.
I want to talk about a couple practical things that I think people can do, like today or tomorrow. And one thing is taking inventory of your schedule. I think that's critically important. And I think there's confusion there. When I say take inventory of your schedule, I'm actually, and this is something you say, Kevin, of course, but I'm stealing it from you in this moment. But inventory means you're actually cataloging what you do. It's not necessarily setting a schedule, although that's part of it. But if you catalog what you do, I think, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're taking inventory of the good things you're doing, the times that you are valuing your time. But then when you're truly taking inventory of every minute or every hour of every day, you're also cataloging the times where maybe you're not taking advantage of your time.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And people just go through life and they expect things to change without making any changes. And it starts with your calendar. And I learned this from David Meltzer, actually, in his one-on-one coaching. Being a student of your calendar and also studying your calendar is really important. So what did I do today and what am I going to do tomorrow? Right. And when you take inventory of what you did, you can look at the things where you wasted time. You can find out how you can be more efficient. You can find out the things that really shouldn't have been in there in the first place, or maybe took up too much time. So I think really analyzing what you're doing in a day, it's kind of like analyzing your food or anything else. Like if you look back at the food that you ate over the last month and you're not in a great place, you might look and be like, oh my God, dang, like I could have eaten a salad instead of that cheeseburger. I could have cut that milkshake and had water instead. It's the same thing with your calendar. You look back at your calendar and look at the time wasted and then try to figure out how to fill that gap with better spaces.
I think so many people, they'll come home from work and maybe it's a job they don't like, but that's kind of a different issue. And they'll quote decompress or whatever they want to do to sort of relax after a tough day at work. But that turns into basically being on the couch for like 3 or 4 hours until bedtime. Yeah. Or they'll decide they want to play like Xbox or PlayStation. By the way, I was very happy to hear that you were a PlayStation guy, not an Xbox guy from one of your interviews. But the truth is, I only got super productive in what my estimation is of super productive. I mean, I value pretty much every minute of my day because I have to at this point, but it coincided with me stopping playing Madden on PlayStation. Like you can't correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but I mean, if you really want to take advantage of your time and you really want to dive into something new while maintaining maybe the salary or the job you're doing right now, I mean, Madden can't be involved with that, right? Xbox cannot be involved with that. Or do you find time to do that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a healthy amount of anything if it is a healthy amount, right? Most people fall into the trap of addiction, right? Like I made a post about, if you're not where you want to be in your life, throw away the Xbox, throw away the PlayStation, or not even just put it in a box somewhere for a little while.
Mhm.
Cut out all the negative. If you're bitching and sorry,
No,
if
no,
you're
no, please.
okay, if you're
Yeah.
bitching and complaining about where you are in life, if you are if you hate your job, if you hate where you live, if you hate how much money you have, if you hate that you can't pay for something for your kid or your mom, or if you really don't like where you are in life, but you continue to piss away your time on activities that don't move you forward, then you're a joke. You really don't care that much because you'd rather ignore the real problem that you have at hand, and you'd rather escape in Xbox, PlayStation, movies, TV, TikTok, whatever, right? So people got so man, I had this video that did pretty well where I just said that, right? If you're not where you want to be, stop playing so many video games. That's it. You have extra time outside of work. You complain that you don't have time, but you're using your time on other things, right? But yeah, I mean, people sure got a little heated and triggered by that because it's true. Also, the reason why people got so mad at that is because it's true and they know it's true and they
Yeah.
they refuse to accept the pot. And I was just like that too. I was so much, even just a few years ago, like playing video games like 6 hours a day and not even realizing like how big of a deal that is, right? Like, what if you took that time and put it towards something else? It's just people don't like the truth sometimes.
Yeah, the truth hurts, but that's why you have to be introspective. You have to have those conversations with yourself, or at the very least, do the practical thing of taking inventory of your schedule. Because I mean, I think ultimately that's where you find where the weak spots are in your day, in your week, in your month. And if you're writing down, if you're taking stock of what you're doing on a weekly basis, let's say, and you
Yep.
find yourself like sitting on the couch for 4 hours between 5:30 and 9:30, or if you find yourself playing PlayStation from 7:30 till bedtime, like you're not in a position at that point to complain about where you are in life because you're just wasting that time that you could be applying to something extremely productive.
Yeah,
Kevin,
exactly.
speaking of productivity, I really liked the Billie Jean interview. Not just because his name is super cool. I assume that's like his actual name. But Billie Jean is anyway, super, super cool guy. One thing, he said a lot of things that I thought were really interesting, sort of in that marketing realm. And I think another problem that people have, including myself, I'm not necessarily like the authority on this, and Kevin, nor are you, of course, but marketing yourself, being creative, being different. I think that's really important because a lot of people, they're going through the hard work, but they're not differentiating themselves in any way whatsoever. So they kind of get lost in the shuffle among a lot of other people that are kind of trying to do the same thing they are. So one thing Billy said that I thought was really interesting is, what problem can you solve? And I think if people kind of hone in on that, okay, yeah, how am I marketable to this person that I want to work for? What am I doing to sort of go the extra mile and differentiate myself? Is that something with your company? Is that something that you've noticed where you are gravitating to the people that are, quote, solving a problem or differentiating themselves?
Yeah, I mean, you have to solve a problem, right? That's why people pay you. And when you look at anything, any company or any product that's successful, it solves a problem. I mean, the things that you buy, right? Like, why do people buy a cheeseburger? Because they're hungry and they want something quick. Why do people buy cocaine? Well, because they want to go out and party and waste their life, right? Well, why do people buy Ferraris or Rolexes, right? There's a value attained with that. It makes you feel good. So I think that in anything that you do, you need to be providing value and you need to, yeah, I mean, be different, but be yourself. A lot of people, when it comes to content creation or marketing or whatever, they want to fit this mold that society wants to put them in. They want to reach this certain audience by being a certain way that really isn't true to them. And this is something that everybody struggles with. I struggle with it every single day. If you're making content, right, make content for the people that it's for and be yourself, and the right people will attract. I think a lot of people overestimate what a large audience will do and they underestimate what a high quality small audience will do. So the other day I was talking with my friend and he said something about hey, I only have, 20 people that watch my videos or something like that. And it's like, dude, you have 20 people that you can get on a stage and speak to and influence at any time of the day. Don't undervalue that,
I love that. You're right, because what this is ultimately is a stage. It's nothing different. And to have 5 or 8 or 20 or 200 people dialed in on you, it means you're having some sort of impact. And I think you can probably grow off of that. Speaking of impact, one thing, and I want to keep you for another few minutes, because one thing that you are really focused upon with your website and with your podcast, Thinking Bigger with Kevin Pheley, is making sure people realize their potential. Now, I know we've kind of gone through that with some of the practical tools and some of the things that people can do, but can you just kind of explain where you're at with that mission?
Yeah. So sorry, the line kind of broke up. Could you say that again?
Oh yeah. Your mission to just make sure people are realizing their potential.
Yeah. I mean, look, most people, and Ed Milet talks about meeting his perfect self when he dies, right? If you guys don't know who Ed Milet is, he's incredible. And Ed talks about when he dies, he wants to get to heaven. And, he knows that when he walks into heaven, he thinks that God's going to introduce him to the perfect version of him, the absolute peak of what he can be like. And he says that every day he's chasing that perfect person. I think that a lot of successful people are always trying to outdo themselves. So look, if you aren't where you want to be in life, you have to first visualize what that perfect person would be like, right? Jacked, rich, happy, successful, whatever that is. Visualize what that's like. And then also visualize what that person is doing differently than you, right? So maybe financially they're taking more risks, or they're making smarter plays, or they're spending time they're doing something different than what you're doing. And the biggest issue, the biggest mistake that we fall into is complacency. We get comfortable doing the same thing every day. Most people in their life wake up, grab coffee, water, shower, brush their teeth, get dressed, head to the office, right? They're stressed out while they head to the office. They get to the office, they go work a job. They enjoy the 15 minutes that they get to go take a dump on their break. That's like the highlight of their day. They finish their work day, they scramble home, they make dinner, and then they go to, maybe watch some TV, play some video games, and go to bed. The whole time they're thinking about this better life, right? What would my life be like if I had this, if that? Man, it'd be so nice. They're driving their Toyota Corolla. They see a Ferrari. Man, I would love to drive that Ferrari, whatever it is, right? But all throughout the day, they do the same exact things that's getting them the same results. So I think if there's anything that my message is, it's think bigger, right? The reason why the podcast is called Thinking Bigger is because anywhere that we are, me, you, anybody can think bigger and have a better result, right? Before the 4-minute mile was a thing, nobody thought it was possible. They were thinking smaller. And then Roger Bannister went out and did it. And then guess what? Within a few days, a few other people did it. And now it's like no big deal. Same thing with flying, right? The Wright brothers, they thought bigger. Everybody's like, you're going to take that car thing and put it in the air. You're crazy. But no, they just thought bigger. And you don't have to think on that big of a level. You just have to think a little bit bigger than you do on a daily basis. You just have to do a little more. You have to get 1% or more better every single day. And the compound effect of that will leave you as an unrecognizable person a year from now.
I want to wrap up the sort of the thinking bigger comment with the following question. I kind of want to take you back to the jail cell, not knowing the crime that you committed, just knowing that you're probably facing some charges. Life isn't going as you planned, I'm guessing, in that moment. You get out of the jail cell, you're at home, you're very disappointed in yourself. What turned it around? Was it you being able to have the mindset to think bigger in that very moment? Or was there something else that spurred you to say to yourself, no, this is not the life for me. I can do better.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was tragedy with alcohol. It's like it's gonna happen, right? If you have a problem with alcohol, something bad is going to happen, and bad things happen all the time, right? Whether it's, you get into a fight at a bar, or you sleep in and don't go to work because you drank too much the night before, or whatever it is, right? For me, before I got sober, there were a bunch of series of events that were like, okay, I should probably get sober, right? Nothing terrible, but it was almost like the universe was like, all right, I'm just going to keep giving you worse and worse stuff until you realize that you have to make a change. And if you just keep going, eventually you're going to die, or eventually you're going to end up in prison or whatever, right? And I just missed all those subtle signs. And again, my buddy Michael Larson planted a seed when he said that I was, he wished that he had a healthy, non-disease ridden body, and he just watched me ruin mine, and how disrespectful it was. We forget what we have. And, I think ultimately it led me to always thinking I could be doing better. I could be getting sober. And after Michael had passed, which he passed away, years ago, but I think I always knew I needed to get sober. But it was in that moment that everything came together, and it was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it now. And I just did. That's it.
Yeah. Observe the signs before you get to that jail cell, ideally. But Kevin, it's so impressive how you've turned it around. I encourage everybody to follow Kevin on Instagram, and definitely download his podcast. Check him out on YouTube as well. But I got to leave you with this question before we get out of here, because I ask every single guest this question. Kevin, if there are 3 people that you can think, dead or alive, that have gotten you to the place that you are today, and you're just so thankful for it that you want to thank them right now, are there 3 people that come to mind that kind of, whether it's from a mindset standpoint or from just an actual practical standpoint, who are the 3 people you'd like to thank for getting you to where you are right now?
Dude, 3 people is not enough. I mean, I'll give you 3 people, but people think that successful people get there on their own. Like, never, not once. I had so many mentors, so many people that believed in me before I believed in myself. It's just, you don't get there alone. But if I were to name 3 people, one would obviously be my buddy Michael. One would be my sister Megan, who passed away from suicide in 2019. She always pushed me when I was younger, and I hear things that she told me years ago in my head all the time, and it keeps me going. And then also my parents, like most people's parents, try to constrict them and stop them and force them to do this thing. When I told my parents I wasn't going to college, they were like, cool, go figure it out. Just be happy. And without that acceptance from my parents, I would not be here.
Wow. That's 3 great people, obviously, your family. And that, again, the Michael Larson, if you're watching this now or watching it later and you haven't seen it, go to Kevin Pheley's Instagram and just scroll down a bit, or go to my Twitter right now, because I posted the entire video. It is one of there's a reason that went viral, because it's such a real moment from you, but it offers such great perspective on what we are taking for granted and what we need to appreciate every single day with every moment that we have.
Yeah.
Kevin, let us know what do you got coming up next? By the way, I saw that you had is it Brian McFarland, the fire
Billy
festival?
McFarland. Yeah.
Excuse me, Billy. What a cool interview. What a cool get. I know you interview so many like really cool people. Are you friends with him? I'm just curious, how did that interview come about?
Yeah. So Billy, shout out to Billy, by the way. So if you guys don't remember, Billy is the dude that was with Ja Rule and started Fire Festival, which turned out to be a nightmare, and it didn't work out. And there was money stolen by Billy and from investors. Billy went to prison. Billy learned a tough mistake. And I reached out to Billy on Instagram. We got connected. We flew out to New York to interview him. And I wasn't sure what to expect, but I can tell you he's a good dude. And he really genuinely is trying to pay everybody back. And, I think it's really important to look at things like that from what you would have done in their shoes. Like, if you're 24, 25 years old with $40 million in your account, like, most 25-year-olds are going to spend a little bit of that money on partying or whatever. So, not saying it was okay, but I think people make mistakes and they can turn their life around. So I wanted to give a lot of, because Billy was on every top podcast out there, I think, except for Joe Rogan. I mean, he was on all the podcasts after he got out of prison. And, I think it's funny because a lot of people like attack him and they corner him. And it's like, I don't want to kick somebody when they're down. I want to give an honest perspective and I want to ask the tough questions. But yeah. So anyways, reached out to Billy. We went out there, interviewed him. Great guy, doing some cool things. And I would say now we're friends. We talk every couple days. And yeah, if you guys want to make some money and you want to work with Billy to help him pay back some of the people, there's a lot of opportunity right now. So hit him up.
Well, I was really impressed with his candor and his humility in that moment. It didn't seem like, you get a picture painted of somebody and it's an accurate depiction in the time, but it looked like the years in prison that he had to spend and coming out, he gained some perspective and is a much different person now than certainly he was then. Maybe I'm mischaracterizing it, but he seemed, extremely likable. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that with your interview, but that's how it came off.
Yeah. And some people who have bad intentions are like that too. So I think it's important to really like understand and have a good intuitive feeling about somebody. But my intuition about him was, this guy's trying to do what he can to better him. Why would I kick him when he's down? Why can't I, and I connected him with this guy named John Sarasani, and now they're doing a deal and now they're doing something that's going to pay all the people back in the Bahamas. So I don't know. It's just like, again, it comes down to that perspective and gratitude of just your everyday life, right? Like you have to see things differently and think bigger.
Yeah. And stay positive. Well, Kevin, this has been a positive conversation, and everybody please go download the Thinking Bigger with Kevin Pheley podcast. You can catch Billy McFarland and Billy Jean and a bunch of other guests that Kevin has interviewed. But for now, we're done here on Sia Nejad Sports. We have 2 guests next week. I'm really excited about that. But Kevin, so excited to have you on. You are just the perfect fit for what I'm trying to do on Sia Nejad Sports, and appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Sia. Talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. That's all we got for Sia Nejad Sports. We'll see you next week.